Today we are, today we are discussing from Bhagavad Gita Cities, chapter 6, text 33 and text 34. Text 33. Arjuna Uvacha Yoyam Yogastvaya Proktah Sambhyena Madhusudhana Yatasyaham na pashyami chanchalatvat stitim sthiram. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Arjuna said, O Madhusudana, the system of yoga which you have summarized appears impractical and unendurable to me, for the mind is restless and steady. Text number 34. Chanchalam himana Krishna pramati palavadridham tasyaham nikraham manye vayor iva dushkaram. Translation Srila Prabhupada ki jai. For the mind is restless, turbulent, obstinate, and very strong. O Krishna, and to subdue it, I think is more difficult than controlling the wind. Om Gyantimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshut Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swami Padamahyam Tadati Swapadadikam Mandeham Shri Guru Sivita Patakam Vim Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sakarjatam Sagana Rupanathan Tam Srivam Satvedam Savadottam Parjani Kritam Krishna Chaitanya Shri Radha Krishna Pathan Saganayita Shri Vishakamatam Shri Krishna Karam Krishna Pilvam Tojagat Shapurvantavadam Moside Saptakanchana Kavarangiradi, Veshwari, Vishubanustuti, Panamam, Vanchaputi, Vishakapati, Vechipatan, Vishnu, Jai Krishna, Chaitanya Prabhu, Yanda, Shri Vaidyanatha, Shivasari, Gauri, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Ram, 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 Moham Karanti Vachaka. Shri Chaitanya, Ishram, Hare Krishna. So we see in this chapter called Dhyana Yoga, Krishna is explaining to Arjuna. Before this verse, we see that Krishna is explaining to Arjuna how one should go to a forest or a jungle and then start meditating with the mind on Krishna. So Arjuna is now in this verse 33, he says that system of yoga, which Lord Krishna has explained, he says it is impractical and unendurable because the mind is restless and unsteady. So we'll discuss a few important points from this. This system actually, which Krishna explained to Arjuna, was basically the Ashtanga Yoga process, which was prevalent in Satya Yuga. First, we must understand what is yoga. Yoga means it's a linking process with the Supreme Lord. There are several processes to link with the Supreme Lord. One of them is Ashtanga Yoga. The other processes are like Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and so forth. This Ashtanga Yoga is a process which was prevalent in Satya Yuga when people had the atmosphere was quite congenial for this practice of this yoga. And people, not everybody, some of them used to go to jungle or forests far away and practice this. And it basically requires a place of mode of goodness. By now you understood what is goodness, passion, and ignorance. And one requires a place which is the mode of goodness with no disturbance in terms of sound, and so that one can completely focus his mind on the purpose. The purpose is to remember Krishna at the time of leaving his body. The Ashtanga yogis meditate on the four-handed form of the Supreme Lord in the heart. That means the Lord is situated in our heart as Paramatma in his four-handed form. And the yogis basically meditate on that form of the Lord in the heart. So at the time of leaving the body, they see the Lord and then they leave the body, so that they don't come back to this material world to take on another body, as Krishna explains to Arjuna in the further slokas, further chapters. As whatever consciousness is there in we have at the time of leaving our body, that will be our next body. So if we think of a deer at the time of leaving our body, we become a deer in the next body. If you think of a dog, which normally people keep these days at home, dog or a cat or some sort. So if we become attached to it, and then what happens is that our consciousness also become dog consciousness or cat consciousness, and that will be our next life. We can also become a dog or a cat. So in order that we don't deviate at the time of leaving our body, these different processes are given, of which Ashtanga Yoga is there, one of them. In people, this was a practice that was prevalent in the Satya Yuga. You know that the four yugas, Satya Yuga, Tirtha Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Satya Yuga people used to live for 100,000 years, of which they used to, sometimes people used to meditate 50,000 years, 60,000 years, and so forth. And somehow see that they remember the Lord. And that too, not everybody used to practice. Generally, the rishis, the great rishis used to go to these places and practice this Ashtanga Yoga process. But nowadays, people have misled the common man for the sake of making money and saying that this is yoga. It has become more of a physical exercise than a spiritual practice. So when Krishna explained this to Arjuna 5,000 years before, at that time itself, Arjuna said that this is a very difficult process to practice. And even though Arjuna had a lot of good qualities, he was a great devotee of the Lord. He was very strong, very much fixed, and so forth. So at that time itself, 5,000 years before, when things were much better, Arjuna had a lot of facilities and he was also fixed in the Lord. So he could have practiced, but then he himself said that this is very difficult practice to follow. And this practice actually has a lot of pre-steps. When I say pre-steps in the Ashtanga Yoga itself, it starts with yama, niyama, pratyahara, and so forth, asana, dhyana. So dhyana or meditating on the Lord is the last, but once this step just before samadhi. Samadhi is basically a trance, and before that comes dhyana. Before that, there are a lot of other steps like yama, niyama, asana, and so forth. Now, the present age of Kali, people are generally disturbed, and the life span itself is short. One is meant to live for 100 years if he lives a healthy life. As things are degrading in Kali Yuga, people hardly live these days for 60. If they cross 60, it is a big deal. And some even leave their bodies at 50s and 40s and so forth. This is basically, Kali Yuga is a age of struggle, full of hypocrisy and quarrel. And because their mind is always disturbed, they cannot practice this process. Also, this process requires a lot of fresh air and good atmosphere and so forth, which is not available either in the city or even jungles or forests. And it requires a lot of other things like good amount of fresh air so that one can control the breathing air and so forth. So apart from this, people are not very serious about self-realization process. Even though simple processes are given, they don't understand what is the aim of life. So people mislead others by practically leading them to a different process of yoga, just like a physical exercise. But actual yoga system actually requires a good mode of living, asana, like manner of sitting, selection of place, detachment of the mind from material entanglements, and so forth. Mind is always disturbed in Kali Yuga. And to detach oneself from material engagement is all the more difficult. So Arjuna thought that it was impossible for him to follow this system also. And it is said that the facilities that were available at the time of Arjuna was much more better than what is now in the age of Kali, that too with a lot of disturbances in the mind. And one of the aspects of practicing this yoga, I mean, one cannot see the Lord face to face unless and until one is free from all the anarthas. We have a lot of anarthas in us like lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, and so forth. So unless and until one becomes free from all these anarthas, it is not possible to practice any type of yoga. As a matter of fact, not only Dhyana yoga. Dhyana yoga is in fact the most toughest. And then other, of course, others like Karma yoga, Jnana yoga, Dhyana yoga, Bhakti yoga. But for this age of Kali, this Ashtanga yoga is definitely not possible. And the simplest method that is given by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he appeared 500 years before is this: simply chant the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, by which, by constant chanting, automatically one becomes purified of all the anarthas. And then once one becomes purified of the anarthas, then one can see the Lord at the end of his at the time of leaving his body, that is death. So that is ultimately the goal of life, that is to see Krishna at the time of death. Then in the next sloka, Arjuna is telling, Chanchalahi Mana Krishna. He says the mind is restless, it is turbulent, it is obstinate and very strong, O Krishna. And to subdue it, I think, is more difficult than controlling the wind. So very strong point. You know, it is very difficult when there is a wind that is blowing in a very strong force, 50 kilometers, 60 kilometers, and so forth. Even normally, we can't control a wind which is blowing at even a low speed. And if there's a wind that is blowing at a very high speed of 56 kilometers, 50 kilometers or 60 kilometers, it is not possible to control the wind. So here in this sloka, Arjuna says that his mind is restless, his mind is turbulent, and it is obstinate and very strong. And then he says that to subdue this mind is more difficult than controlling the wind. We'll understand a few important points on this. First, he says the mind is so strong and obstinate that it sometimes overcomes the intelligence. See, the thing is, body is so structured that the mind is higher than the senses. The intelligence is higher, supposed to be higher than the mind. Then the soul is supposed to be higher than the intelligence also. So basically, one should use his intelligence to direct the mind in such a way that one is in the right path. But in Kali Yuga, we see the mind is always disturbed. Everyone, whether he practicing physical yoga or whatever yoga he may be practicing, the mind is always disturbed. So instead of using the mind, using intelligence to control the mind drags the intelligence of a conditioned living entity. Like many times we see that people take a dog for a walk. The master is supposed to lead the dog in the right direction, right path. But we see many times, most of the times, the dog drags the master. Similarly, instead of using the intelligence to control the mind drags the intelligence. That is the condition of this yoga. So one is that the mind is restless. We see the thing is that one requires for the practice of yoga for the mind to be very, very steady. Unless until the mind is steady, one cannot practice whatever form of yoga it is. Even if you're chanting the holy name, if the mind is disturbed, it may not be able to focus the mind on the holy name of the Lord. But still, that is the only process that is given for deliverance in the Kali Yuga. Because the mind is disturbed in so many things. By the time we think of one subject, there is another thought process that is already going on into the mind. So this way, the mind is always restless and one is not able to focus himself steadily on one thought process. One is not able to keep his mind steady or patient, with a lot of patience and with these things. So one is always nervous and impatient. The children also get restless on long journeys. Similarly, the mind is also disturbed always. It is restless. That is one point. Other one is, he says the next point he says is the mind is turbulent. Now, you might have seen, some of you might have experienced, some of you might not have experienced. If you have gone in a flight, on a long distance flight, many times there are strong winds that disturb the flight path and the steadiness of the flight. So what happens is that all of a sudden, due to the winds, the aircraft basically comes down all of a sudden by many thousands of feet, or sometimes it goes up. So that is what is a turbulence. So similarly, the mind is always turbulent. it is with a lot of agitation, not only mentally, but also emotional disturbances are there, which create unsteady uh, state of mind, state of affairs in the mind. So that is why it is called that it's a sort of a state of confusion, which we can't know how and where it works. This is one point. The next thing is that it's obstinate. That means one is refusing to change his opinions. For example, one might give one opinion, but some are very flexible. They are open to the opinions from others also. But some of them will see that they are very, very fixed on that. And even if other people try to persuade a person to change his opinion, still he does not change. So this is one aspect of the mind. It is very, very stubborn, very obstinate. And then the other point that is mentioned is that the mind is very, very strong. For a man in this practical world, it is very difficult to oppose all these contrasting, opposing elements. So here Arjuna says that it is very difficult to control the mind. So artificially, irrespective of whatever process one might try, it is not possible to control the mind. So one has to have a higher taste or higher engagement for one to control the mind. So he says that it is more difficult to control the mind than even the raging wind. Now in the Katha Upanishad, there is a quote given, Srila Prabhupada gives. He gives the sloka. I will not try to take the sloka, I'll give the translation. It says the individual is a passenger in the car of the material body. The intelligence is the driver. So the intelligence is supposed to drive the car. Mind is a driving instrument, and the senses are the horses. So the senses of the horses means there are so many senses that we have, knowledge acquiring senses, working senses. So all these senses somehow or the other keep dragging the mind. Now, the mind is supposed to be superior than the senses, but the senses also keep dragging the mind here, there. At one point of time, one might think, I must have a nice pani puri or bhel puri and so forth. All of a sudden, the mind will be disturbed when he sees a foreign origin restaurant or something that he might want to have a baked or something. So the mind the senses keep on dragging here to there to here and so forth. That is what the senses are meant for. But unless and until the senses are brought under control, one cannot control the mind itself. So this yoga practice is given so that one can control the senses. And this example is given so that we can understand if there are 6 horses, the horses keep moving in different directions. And then what happens is the chariot driver is not able to drive the chariot. That is the condition of the mind. The mind is so strong and obstinate that even if one tries his level best, he is not able to utilize his intelligence. So example is given about an infection. Sometimes if there is an infection in the body, the doctor might prescribe that medicine. But the infection might be so strong that the medicine might not have an effect also. Similarly, the mind is supposed to be controlled by the practice of yoga, but such practice is not practically possible in these days itself. When it was not possible 5,000 years before for Arjuna, what we can talk about that practice in this current age now. The easiest way, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, who appeared 5,000 years before, he said that chanting the holy name of the easiest means of deliverance. So to control the mind, one has to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra for deliverance. And there are many processes given in the Bhakti Samrita Sindhu or Nectar of Devotion. I think there are about 64 processes, of which 9 are given. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, and so forth. So if you are able to follow these 9 processes in this Kali Yuga, which is recommended by none other than Prahlad Maharaj, then one may be able to try to control his mind. Srila Prabhupada also gives an example of a very nice sloka in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, from the 9th canto. It says, I will not read the entire sloka, Savai Mana Krishna Padarinda Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunani Varnave. The translation is, Maharaja Ambrisha always engaged his mind in meditating upon the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is one of the examples that I given in Srimad Bhagavatam, how Maharaj Ambrisha always focused on, engaged his mind on meditating the lotus feet of Krishna. His words in describing the glories of the Lord. I mean, we see that many times if two friends meet or three friends meet, they may be impelled to talk about politics, economics, and so many other things. But which these thoughts and these words basically bind us in this material world. Then Maharaj Ambrisha used to use his hands in cleaning the Lord's temple. See, like I mentioned at the beginning of the class, we have a lot of anarthas, less anger, greed, and so forth. But if you use your hands in cleaning the temple, automatically, whether you want it or not, like it or not, the anarthas start going away from your mind. We become free from these anarthas. Then Ambrish Maharaj, he used his ears in engaging in hearing the words of Lord Krishna or about Krishna. That means one should use his ears in hearing the words of Lord Krishna, like Bhagavad-gītā or Srimad Bhagavatam. Otherwise, what happens is that we generally want to hear some pop music or rock music or Hindi film song and so forth. So the ears can be used in the service of Krishna by hearing about Krishna. Then he engaged his eyes in seeing the deity of Krishna. We always want to see something very, very attractive to us, which definitely depends on person to person. Somebody might get attracted to the opposite sex. Somebody might get attracted to something else. Somebody might get attracted to seeing something beautiful from their own vision. So one must engage. Ambrish Maharaj used his eyes in seeing the beautiful form of the deity of Krishna, Krishna's temples, and he used his legs to travel to places, holy places like Vrindavana, Mathura, and so forth. Then he engaged his senses in the touch in touching the bodies of the Lord's devotees. Then he engaged his sense of smell in smelling the fragrance of tulasi offered to the Lord. So when we go to a temple, then normally the pujari gives us some flowers or tulasi leaves which are offered to the Lord. If we have faith in that system, definitely the moment we smell the aroma of tulasi that was offered to Krishna, then a lot of our anarthas become purified. And then he engaged his tongue in tasting the Lord's prasada. So that means one has to eat Krishna prasada, that which is offered to the Lord. By honoring prasada, we become free from the desire to taste unwanted things in the outside street. He engaged his legs in walking to the holy places and temples of the Lord. Of course, it may not be very practical these days if the temples are situated far off from the place of residence. But I remember during our childhood days, the first thing our parents would do is, after getting up in the morning, taking bath, they used to take us by walk to the nearest temple. And these were some healthy practices that was being followed earlier. Then Amrish Maharaj, he used his head in bowing down before the Lord. And this is one of the important aspects in devotion service. Uh, uh, Whenever you go to a temple or see the Lord, one must immediately bow down. By bowing down in front of the Lord, one becomes free from a lot of false ego that one has got. So the more you bow down, the more you become free from all this false ego. And Amrish Maharaj used all his desires in serving the Lord 24 hours a day. Indeed, Maharaj Amrisha never desired anything for his own sense gratification. He engaged all his senses in devotional service in various engagements related to the Lord. That is the way to increase attachment for the Lord and become completely free from material desires. So this is an example of Ambrish Maharaj, who used all his senses in the service of the Lord. Many of you are attending the class. Some of you may be working, some of you may be studying in school or college. I don't know whatever background it is. Question might come into our mind: what do I do if I study or work? Those also can be used in the service of the Lord. If there is a student who is studying in school or college, he can always think that I'm undertaking my studies as service to the Lord, and whatever little bit knowledge I get from my studies, I will use it in the service of the Lord. Similarly, if there's a person who is working in a private company or something like that, he can utilize that service also thinking that it is a service offered to him by Krishna. One thing we must understand, Krishna is the cause of all causes. Without his costless mercy, nothing can happen. If somebody has got a job which is satisfying to him, he should think that, yes, this job has been offered to Krishna, and whatever he gets, if he can part with a small amount, giving as a donation to the temple in charity, then he becomes free from the bondage otherwise he might have. Otherwise, one thinks himself due to false ego that I am the cause, I have got this job due to my capability, and whatever I achieved in the company is due to my own self. These are all false egos, and one should become free from this. So if one is dovetailing everything in the service of Krishna, you can continue whatever service you're doing. Similarly, a housewife might be engaged in cooking, whatever it is. But if you say, if she cooks and offers the bhoga to the Lord and then honors as a prasad, that is the greatest service to the Lord that can be done. So similarly, every aspect of our daily activities can be dovetailed in the service of Krishna, and that's Maharaj Ambrisha was a perfect example. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, when he was here in this planet, he gave a very good verse, which is from Chaitanya Bhagavad. I will not read the sloka. The translation says, Krishna is your father, Krishna is your mother, Krishna is your life and wealth. I fall at your feet and beg you to engage your minds in thinking of Krishna. That means Krishna is all in all for us. Our relationship with our parents may be existing in this birth, but eternal relationship with Krishna is always existing, not only in this birth, it has always existed, it will continue to exist. That's why in this sloka, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Krishna is your father and Krishna is your mother. Krishna is your life and wealth. That means everything is Krishna only. And finally, he says, I fall at your feet and beg you to engage your minds in thinking of Krishna. So the Lord himself is begging that you please engage your minds in thinking of Krishna. Another nice sloka in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, I'll just discuss the translation. It says, where Krishna is telling Uddhava, Uddhava was also a great devotee of the Lord. So Krishna is telling, therefore, one should reject all material posts of elevation, which are like mental creations of a dream, and should completely absorb one's mind in me. That means whatever we see materially outside, it's all basically like a dream. Dream doesn't last forever. It comes and goes off. Similarly, whatever we may be doing materially also, it's like a dream, maybe in this life, or maybe for a short duration in this life, but it doesn't last forever. Then Krishna further tells, by constantly thinking of me, one becomes purified. Material existence is an uncertain platform subject to constant disturbance. That means the material life itself is nothing but a constant disturbance. But one who is always absorbed in Krishna consciousness is always is steady and undisturbed. That means one who is always absorbed in Krishna, his mind is always focused on Krishna. His mind is always steady and he's not disturbed. Another important nice quote given is that one of the names of Krishna is Manohara. Manohara means who can help control the mind and take the mind from extraneous thoughts. But this requires petition and submission. That means only Krishna can help us control our mind. Nobody else can help. And that requires a petition and submission. So if we put a petition to the Lord, please help me in engaging my mind to the Lord and submit ourselves to the Lord will definitely help us focus our mind on Krishna. And before I conclude the class, I'll give one more analogy. A mind is compared to an unchaste woman, because even if for a short while moment of time left idle, it can take anyone, anywhere to ruination. That means if one associate with an unchaste woman, he can be misdirected at any point in time, anywhere. Similarly, the mind is compared to an unchaste woman because it can take one to ruination, destruction, any point of time, anywhere. Similarly, mind is compared to a monkey because a monkey keeps jumping from one branch of a tree to another branch. In no time it jumps. Similarly, the mind is always jumping from one thought process to the other. But the easiest process of controlling the mind, Krishna himself says in Bhagavad-gītā, Man manabhava mad bhakto. Engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee. Offer obeisances to me and worship me. In this way, being completely absorbed in me, you will surely come to me. So if you are absorbed always in thinking of Krishna, definitely at the end of our life, we will think of Krishna and we don't have to come back to this material world again in struggling with birth and death cycle. We can go back to Krishna's planet where there is no birth and there is no death and no struggle for disease. So this is in a nutshell. Arjuna is telling that mind is very restless and it is very difficult to control that a raging wind also. So mind is difficult to control, but then one can always try and regulate it by always thinking of Krishna. With this, I conclude the class for the day. Any of you has got one question, you can ask me. Dandavat Prabhu, yes.
You said in 11th canto, if you don't mind, can you tell the verse, Prabhu?
Pardon me?
11th canto, you said some verse you quoted, yeah?
Okay, you want the verse number, is it?
Yeah, yeah.
11th canto, 14th chapter, 28th verse.
Okay, very nice class, Prabhu. Thank you very much for inviting.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. So I will conclude the class for this with this. Thank you all very much. Bhagavad